Today I'm going to share with you guys two different recipes. One is Pico De Gallo and one is a Shallot Vinaigrette. Both recipes I found on Pinterest and I will link them down in the description below if you're interested in seeing the original recipe. I basically am following them both to a T. I have made both of them and I can vouch that they are incredible. I'm going to start off with the Pico De Gallo recipe. So if you are ready for this recipe and you're excited and you want to support my channel, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet already. I can't wait to get into some of these fresh recipes for you guys. So let's get right into it.
Alright, ooh baby, just hold tight. We're up the moonlight. Believe in the magic.
Here are the ingredients you will need for this recipe. 4 Roma tomatoes or whatever tomatoes you like. I prefer firm tomatoes just because they hold up a little better in the Pico De Gallo. A small onion or half of a medium onion. 1 jalapeno, or I have an extra one on standby because when I first made this, the 1 jalapeno did not make it any more spicy and I kind of wanted to add more. But that also depends on the type, like how spicy your jalapeno is. Lime, cilantro, and pepper and salt. This recipe is super simple because basically you're just chopping everything as fine or as chunky as you'd like. I actually have a really awesome contraption that makes my job so much easier. This is just like a chopper. I got it off Amazon. I'll try to find it and link it for you guys if you're interested, but it makes the chopping a lot more convenient. You still have to cut it to get it to size to fit inside of this chopper, but everything is uniform, and when I made the salsa before I used this, and it was super convenient and easy. So I'm gonna start with the onion, and basically I'm just gonna be chopping it all into diced up pieces, and I'm using this entire onion. Another reason why the chopper is really convenient is it saves your eyes from burning. So that's another plus. All right, so this is the onion. Now my onion I got from Sprouts, and they're like the ugly produce, so you get it for cheaper. And usually my onions are perfect. This one had like some weird dimplage going on throughout a lot of it, so I peeled a lot of it away. I'm not sure if this is gonna be enough onion, but here's what it looks like. Here's how much I have so far. I'm just putting it right into the Tupperware. That way when I'm done, I can just put the lid on it and I don't have to worry about transferring it again. It saves me one less dish to wash. So this is my onion. Now I'm gonna do the exact same thing for my tomato. And the reason I like the more firm tomatoes is because when I'm using this chopper, it does not work well with mushy tomatoes. Obviously, it makes sense. It gets pretty compacted and will just mush. But firm tomatoes I've seen work pretty well in this. But I will just say, test it out if you have this chopper. Don't just go straight for it. Sometimes hand cutting tomato is the best option, but I'm gonna go ahead and slice up these tomatoes and then I'm gonna put them through the chopper. I do like taking the seeds out of my onion because it gets really wet. And it gets wet regardless. Your Pico De Gallo will get wet, but I've found with the seeds, it makes it almost like a soup. So if you like that, then go ahead and leave the seeds. But if you prefer it to be less soupy, but still wet, I would suggest to take the seeds out. Put the flesh side facing up, so that way the softer side goes straight through and this protects against the bottom. And I just want to show you what it looks like when I do that. You can see they're nice and finely diced. They're not smushed. So these are a good tomato to work with using this chopper. Here's my first tomato. I'm adding it straight in with the onion, and I'm going to do the rest of the other 3 in here, and I'll be right back. I decided I want to experiment with this batch of Pico De Gallo, so I am going to add a little bit of red onion. I wanted to do this the first time, but I just followed the recipe. But this time, because I have so little onion, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of red, so it's gonna have a little bit more color in it. And I really love the flavor of red onion, so I'm just gonna chop, I think, I'm gonna do 3 segments of it, and I'll show you, like this much, 3 of these. So we'll see how that adds to the taste and flavor. I'm hoping it really flavorifies and makes it taste really good. Now I'm gonna add my red onion into the mix. It smells amazing. I think it's gonna be a good addition. That might have been a lot of onion, but that's okay. I like onion in my pico, so there we go. So here's what it looks like so far. Now it's time to add the jalapeno, and I wanted to show you guys a cool tip that I recently learned, and maybe you already know because I just thought it was mind-blowing. So you don't want the seeds of the jalapeno in your Pico De Gallo unless you want it really, really spicy, which I don't because I want everybody in my family to enjoy it, including myself. I don't want to burn my tongue off. But I found out a great way to get rid of these seeds, and I'm going to show you guys. It's so simple. You just take a spoon and you literally just spoon it out like that, and it all just comes out all at once. And I flip it over to the other side just to get the little remaining pieces out. Just be careful. It does spray sometimes, and you don't want to squirt any juices in your eyes, but that's how easy it is. Before, I used to take a knife and painstakingly try to scrape it out instead of just get a spoon and easily just scrape it out. It's so easy. Now that I have my 2 slices, I'm just gonna cut these in half so they fit my chopper, and I'm just using my chopper once again to make my life easier. So I will say you can see how big these squares cut. This is kind of a bigger chop for the jalapeno. Now, I don't mind it. I think it's actually nice, but the recipe does say very finely diced, and I would say this is not quite as fine diced as it's probably referring to. So if you want to hand chop the jalapeno, I feel like that's probably a fine thing to do if you want it to be a little bit finer and just like kind of blend in with the rest. I'm okay with it being a little chunky. Now, before I add the second jalapeno, I want to give this a test after it's all made to see how spicy it is. This is what it looks like so far. I mean, this is gorgeous. Honestly, I just love the look of it, even as much as I think I love the taste, which is saying a lot because I do love me some Pico de Gallo. Eat it as a salad, actually. Okay, so now that we have that, we are adding half a bunch of cilantro, half a cup, I'm sorry. So I just have this cilantro I bought from Aldi. It's already washed and ready to go. I washed everything prior to filming, just so you guys know that you think I didn't wash it, I did. And then with the cilantro, I'm just gonna cut, like, eyeball half a cup, and I'm just gonna chop it up nice and fine, or not really fine, but you know, just like a rough chop through it so that it can mix in well with the salsa. And I don't really care if there's stems. I know if you don't like the stems, that's fine, but I know they're edible and they're totally fine to eat, so I just chop it up all together, and the stems and all, and it still tastes very good. So there's my fine chop on here. I almost forgot to show you where I'm putting it. You already know, but it's going straight into the bowl. We are at the final stretch, and like I told you, it's literally not that much effort at all. It's just like chopping, but when you have the chopper, I'm telling you, makes my eyes not burn too with the onion. So anyway, so we have the cilantro. Now we're just adding the final touches, which is the lime. So I always roll out my lime just to kind of get the juices flowing. And then I have this awesome thing, again, I got on Amazon, and it has the lemon squeezer and the lime, which is really convenient to have both. And it makes my job of getting all the lime juice out as easy as possible. So I'm putting it on the lime section, obviously face down where the holes are, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and squeeze it in. I'm doing a whole lime, so that had a lot of juice in it, which is great. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. So I'm just putting, I like a decent amount of salt in this. I feel like it really helps bring out the flavor. And then a little pepper to taste. And again, I really like pepper as well. And then you're just gonna stir it up. Almost immediately, you start smelling the most amazing aroma come from this. If you've ever had fresh Pico de Gallo, you know exactly the smell I'm talking about. It has a unique smell, and it smells amazing. It's probably like the cilantro and lime mixed together. The onion, all of it. It is just so amazing, and look at how gorgeous this is. I think I'm officially ready to dig in and give this a little taste test to see if it needs more jalapeno. I'm just using the Trader Joe's blue corn tortilla chips. What better chip to go with a yummy Pico De Gallo? All right, I see I have a jalapeno in that chip bite. Let me show you up close. There it is. Bang. Here we go. I think I need to give it another taste test. This is so delicious and so basic. It's like, why not make it at home, right? Especially with summer around the corner, fresh Pico De Gallo in the fridge, woo! And it's always better the next day. So I love to let it just sit in its own juices, and then tomorrow I'll open this baby up and I'm going to eat it like there's no tomorrow. This is so good, but you know what? I'm adding one more jalapeno. It can use another one, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But don't go anywhere, because you know I'm about to make the shallot vinaigrette recipe that I've been making for my salads. One of the best dressing recipes I've ever made. Granted, it's only like the third one I've ever made, so that's not saying much, but I do love it and Tim loves it, and it has mustard. So let's check that new recipe out right now. So we're gonna go ahead and switch gears and get into that recipe right after I chop up this jalapeno. So I added the extra jalapeno and it is very good. Tim already devoured some of it too. Now we are moving on to our next recipe, which is the shallot recipe, and I'm gonna show you guys all the ingredients before we get going, just like I did previously. So let's get right into it. So the first thing you're gonna need, of course, is a shallot. So I got a shallot. You'll need some olive oil. Got some olive oil here. You need some sherry vinegar, which I do not have, so I'm using red wine vinegar. I used this before and it worked just fine. I think whatever vinegar you have on hand, as long as, you know, you like it, it should work out. So there's that. Then you're also gonna do two types of mustard. One is Dijon mustard. The other is a grainy mustard, and it said the grainier the better. When I was at Sprouts, I just found this one, but I recently was at Aldi and found an even grainier mustard, so I'm gonna use that once this is gone. Again, just a side note, if you're not a mustard person, my husband is the most anti-mustard person ever, and he likes this dressing because there's only just a small, I think 1 teaspoon of each of these in the recipe, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now you're also gonna need 1 clove of garlic. It calls for fresh thyme, which I do have in my lettuce grow, but it hasn't grown yet, so I don't wanna destroy that. So I have to just wait. So in the meantime, I'm using some dried oregano, because oregano and thyme are very similar. So again, it's like what you have on hand should work, and that'll do it for me. Now also you need some honey. So I have this cute little honey bear, salt and pepper to taste, of course. And then the interesting ingredient is some warm water. So I just heated some filtered water on my stove, and I'm letting it cool so it's like warm. Right now it's a little too warm, so hopefully it'll cool down quick. I'll put the lid off. There we go. Now it's time to get started. The first thing you're gonna do is chop your shallots. Now I'm gonna finely chop this. I'm not using my chopper for this because I want it to be even more fine. But first, you're going to have to peel your shallot. Just like an onion, it has a skin. For some reason, a lot of the shallots I get have a friend hitching a ride with them, so I just use them both. It says 1 shallot. I figured, hey, they're connected. That's 1 shallot. I always peel off like that first layer of skin just so that it's fresh underneath. And then once I fine chop this, it says to rinse it under some cold water just to make sure it's nice and clean. So I'm gonna do that as soon as I get this as diced up as I want it. Keep in mind, this is gonna be floating around in your dressing, so you really wanna get it to the right size that you want it to be. If you want it to be chunkier and you wanna have some bite to it, then chop it up a little bit chunkier. But if you don't, then chop it more fine, and you can probably use like a food processor too if you wanted to get it like really chopped up. Okay, so I got the first shallot chopped, and I'm just gonna tell you right now, it really stings the eyes. So if you know any tricks, spare yourself some stinging, because ooh wee, it's making my nose run and my eyes water. But what I'm gonna do is step away for a second. I'm gonna go ahead and put that into my, actually before I do that, I'm gonna use this to measure out my olive oil because then I don't have to waste my measuring cup, but this is what I'm mixing everything into, and then I'm transferring it into a container that I'm keeping in the fridge. And the purpose for that is that I'm reusing a dressing bottle. Let me grab it. I'm reusing a dressing bottle from Trader Joe's, and I just used hot water. The label came right off. I've been using this to add my dressing into, so obviously it's a little hard to pour everything into and then mix it together in a container like this. So unfortunately, I do have another dish for myself, but this one has a handy dandy measuring, measurements on the side. So it saves me a measuring cup that I already got out that I don't need. So I'm gonna add my olive oil in here first and then add the shallots. So that way my measurements are correct and accurate. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of olive oil. So I'm just gonna measure it straight into here, and then I'm going to add the shallots and everything else. We got our cup of olive oil. Now I'm going to add the diced up shallots into here. And basically every single ingredient you're just putting in here, and then you're going to mix it at the end. And I think I'm just gonna use a whisk to mix it up. But once it gets into your container, make sure it has a good lid, so when you use it again, you can shake it up, because obviously the heavier shallots separate and fall to the bottom. So you wanna be able to mix your dressing up every time you use it so it's evenly distributed. Nothing like me doing this recipe wrong, but you know what? I am not going to scrap this video. I'm just gonna show you guys my mistakes, so hopefully you don't make the same one, because I did not read ahead in the instructions, and that's my bad. It is my bad. I've only made this recipe one other time, so I didn't quite remember this, but if I scrap this video, you wouldn't see it for a long time until I ran out of this dressing again. So what I'm gonna show you right now is what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to take 1 tablespoon of hot water, warm water. So then you're gonna add the tablespoon of warm water into a container with just the shallots, not the olive oil. The olive oil is not part of this party right now, but it is because it's there. Now you're also gonna add some vinegar to the water mixture and the shallot mixture, and you're gonna let it sit for 5 minutes. So I'm doing 2 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of the sherry vinegar, but I'm using, again, the red wine vinegar, or wine vinegar, whatever it's called. Yeah, red wine vinegar. So we're gonna pretend like that's sitting for 5 minutes, okay? Again, my bad, I'm sorry. I'm gonna mix this together, maybe it'll help, I don't know. But it's the vinegar and the water is supposed to really bring out the flavor in the shallot. So you know what? It'll probably still taste fine. I feel like I'm back on track now, so I'm gonna show you guys what I'm doing next. I have my garlic in my garlic press, and I'm going to just do the 1 clove of garlic in here. Now, if you are a garlic lover, you can probably add more. I'm just following this recipe as closely as I can. Clearly I am. Next up is the mustard. So these both call for 1.5 teaspoons. So I got the Dijon, and now I'm working with the stone ground. Next up, we have 2 teaspoons of honey. I'm just gonna eyeball it because it's too hard to measure honey with the stickiness factor. So I'm just eyeballing 2 teaspoons. Okay, I'm doing a little extra for safe measure. A little extra honey won't hurt, I hope. And the last ingredient is going to be fresh thyme, but we are playing with some oregano today, and just put it in there. Then of course, salt and pepper to taste. Now I'm gonna whisk it around. Now the last and final step, of course, is to pour your dressing into whichever container you decide to use. Now, one thing I do want to let you guys know is that when I made this before, because it's olive oil, it gets cold in the fridge and it might solidify. Don't be alarmed, that's totally normal. In fact, it just takes leaving it out on the counter for just a few minutes for it to warm up enough to start shaking it, or just put your hands around it and it'll heat it up enough too. I tried using a funnel for this before, you guys, and let me just tell you, it does not work. These shallots get stuck. So you just have to be very careful with pouring in your dressing. So I have a little bit of shallots left. I need to just scrape that in, but it fills almost an entire jar. So you have a almost full bottle of dressing then to keep for the next, I think it says it lasts for like 3 weeks. So it's a pretty good amount of time. You just have to keep shaking it up because it's already separating, as you can see. But when I first read this recipe, I thought, wow, a whole cup of olive oil sounds like a lot. But when you see how much you get out of it and the fact that you're not using an entire jar container of dressing, it makes a lot of sense, and it is a healthier alternative to buying store-bought dressings because you can control what's inside. So that's it. This is the 2 recipes that I have really been loving making and have been in my rotation now for, I don't know, since I started making homemade things all the time. So it's been really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, show it by giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment down below, and of course, subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet already. I appreciate you all who watch and who interact with my content. I love you all. Thank you, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.